Welcome back, everybody. So the clock is ticking ahead of voters deciding who will be our nation's next president. Vice President Kamala Harris meeting with key voting groups addressing the Congressional Hispanic Caucus in Washington, D.C. She had this to say about migration at the border. Listen.
We must also reform our broken immigration system and protect our dreamers and understand we can do both. Create an earned pathway to citizenship and ensure our border is secure. We can do both, and we must do both. And while we fight to move our nation forward to a brighter future,
can and must do both. So let's talk about that. Live right now, CBS News senior White House correspondent Ed O'Keefe. Ed, everything these candidates say is a potential headline. What came out of her speech to the Hispanic caucus?
Oh, this was a pretty standard version of what she's been saying out on the stump read, but saying it to a key constituency here in Washington, one she's worked with through the years. I'm going to take these off because it's getting foggy here for some reason. The Hispanic caucus has several dozen members in the House and the Senate. She's worked with them first as a senator from California, then as vice president. They hold their annual conference this week, where they gather together to hear from various stakeholders, and she shows up as vice president. The president's going to address them tomorrow night to, in essence, say thank you and let's keep working on things. And most notably in her remarks, there was a little more detailed conversation about immigration, there was a little more detailed conversation about abortion and about the economy. And those three things, obviously, top of mind for most voters, and they are for Hispanic voters as well. On the issue of immigration, what was interesting, at least to my ear, was she called out the fact that Trump continues to say he supports the mass deportation of undocumented immigrants. Well, she asked the question, as was asked of him last week in the debate, how would that work? What would it take? And is the country really ready for the separation of families yet again, as we've seen in the early days of the Trump administration? Now, notable that she says this on a day when there's a new survey out, a new national survey that suggests the majority of Americans support the mass deportation of undocumented immigrants. Something like 8 in 10 Republicans, a good handful of independents, and overall a majority of Americans agree with that. So she may actually be on the wrong side of that issue, even as she raises questions about the details, as has been raised with Trump directly before, of how exactly that would work.
You could hear in her words when she emphasized and protect our dreamers, where she is on that issue. So let's talk about the dreamers and others like them, young voters. We're seeing a lot of candidates all over social media courting those young voters. Harris meeting with youth organizers in a virtual event in the coming hours. That's ahead. So how does this really reveal the strategy where the young vote is concerned this cycle?
Well, Reed, it's important to remember, most of those dreamers are not young anymore. They are in their 40s. They are in their 30s. They're having children. They're getting married. They're trying to buy homes and they're trying to have careers. Because remember, dreamers, as was originally defined during the Obama years, was people in their 20s and 30s at the most. They've now grown up. So those that are technically still eligible and called dreamers are much older now than they were when this conversation began. But by talking about that issue generally, you are speaking to families with mixed legal status in this country, of whom, yes, there are many that are young. And so by doing that and emphasizing her concern and her focus on them, it resonates with those younger voters in places like Nevada, Arizona, even in communities in Pennsylvania, Georgia, Wisconsin, and Michigan, where Latino populations are growing. And so emphasizing that and mentioning them is something that a Latino voter or those that are active in campaigns are going to want to hear her stressing, because it allows them to go out and remind those voters that, in fact, she does care about them or she is worried about that issue. But important also to remember, most dreamers, as originally defined during the Obama era, are now folks in their 40s having kids of their own, well advanced in their careers.
You make me think of Astrid Silva of the state of Nevada, who is one of the very prominent dreamers I've had the opportunity to interview and get to know personally as well. Ed O'Keefe, thank you. Glasses or not, you always help us to see clearer. Nice to talk to you on the stream.